Chapter 1. The Boy with Empty Pockets. I am Thomas Miller. I'm 35 now. But this story begins long before. It begins where I learned hunger, where I learned the cost of dreams. I was born in East Detroit, not the part with shiny lights, but the part people don't mention, the part with broken glass sidewalks. Our house was one small room, cracks in walls, no heating inside. Cold winters felt like sharp knives. Blankets weren't thick enough to help. Mom worked in diners and motels, cleaning rooms, scrubbing toilets, folding sheets. She never complained, never slowed down. She was iron wrapped in love. My brother James was just 9. I was 7, always following him. He was the brave one, always. But even brave kids go hungry. We shared one pair of sneakers, one backpack, one blanket, one pillow. When he wore the shoes, I waited. When I wore them, he ran. We went to school without lunch. Teachers looked at us with pity, but pity doesn't fill your stomach. We drank water and kept quiet. One night, the power went out. I remember Mom lighting a candle. She smiled and made shadow puppets, made dragons dance across our ceiling. We laughed, even though we were cold. Laughter is a blanket for children. That night we felt a little warm, even if it was just pretend. At age 9, I got a job. A man needed help delivering newspapers. I woke at 5 every morning. My hands froze on the handlebars. I earned $5 every week, gave it all to my mom. She kissed my forehead and whispered, "You're saving this family, Thomas." Always remember. Those words stayed like ink inside. She never bought anything for herself. Even on Christmas, no new shoes. She made sure we got socks. James wanted to be a doctor. He'd draw organs and bones in books, but we couldn't afford new books. He used torn magazines from garbage cans. Still, he studied under streetlights sometimes, because our bulbs would blow often. I watched him, proud and silent. That boy never gave up hope. Sometimes kids laughed at our clothes, said we smelled like mop water. James would clench his fists, then stop. He knew fists never solve hunger. When I turned 13, James was gone. He left a note on the table. "I'm going. I'll come back strong." We didn't hear from him again. Mom cried in the kitchen floor. She folded his note like prayer and placed it inside her Bible. That was the only thing we had. I wanted to scream, break something, but we were too poor for anger. Even rage felt like a luxury. So I worked, and I waited. Mom aged quickly after James left. Her hands shook more, eyes dimmed softly. Still, she smiled when I walked in, still called me her little hero. One night I came home early, found her asleep by the door. She had fainted from working overtime. I carried her to bed gently. That night I made a promise. I'd leave Detroit. I'd save her. Even if I had to bleed. Even if I had to break. I got a scholarship by luck. One teacher believed in my essays. She pushed my name into a list, and suddenly I had a future. Mom smiled like sunshine on letters, waved goodbye with shaking, proud hands. "Don't forget who you are, Thomas." She said that before I boarded. College was another world entirely different. Warm showers, clean halls, full cafeterias. Kids wore $100 jackets casually, unaware of what real hunger feels like. I didn't fit in, not at first, but pain builds quiet confidence inside people. I walked alone, but stood straight, never let shame drag me backwards. That first winter break, I returned, found Mom weaker but still standing. She cooked my favorite soup slowly, held my hands, and cried softly. "Don't worry, baby," she whispered gently. "You're already what I dreamed of becoming." I held her like fragile porcelain and wished James could see her face. I didn't know she'd be gone soon. I thought we had more time, but life doesn't ask before it leaves. She passed in her sleep one morning. The landlord called me from Detroit, said, "Your mom didn't wake up." I froze in my dorm hallway. The world stopped. My knees gave out. I flew home to silence, cold, found her Bible still by bed. Inside was James's note, still folded, and one photo of us three. She kept love even when abandoned. She stayed strong even when breaking, and she died with dignity and hope. I buried her beside her mother, wore my only suit, trembling inside, said goodbye with a heart screaming inside, but not one tear left my eyes. That night, I promised her again, "I will make your pain mean something, and I will carry James's name too." Chapter 2. The Girl with Hope Eyes. I met her in senior year. Her name was Rachel Matthews, 19. Green eyes, shy smile, worn-out shoes. She sat 2 rows behind me. She wasn't the loudest in class, but her silence had a melody. The way she listened, truly listened, made even silence feel like music. We were assigned a group project. That's how I first spoke to her. Her voice was calm, like water. It slowed my racing thoughts instantly. She asked if I liked poetry. I said, "Only if it's honest." She smiled. "That's the only kind worth reading." And just like that, she stayed. Rachel worked part-time at a bookstore. She loved second-hand books with history, said fingerprints on pages told stories. Every book has its past lives. I started visiting her after classes, pretending I liked reading too much. She saw through it but smiled. Kindness was her way of flirting. We'd sit on the bookstore stairs, talk about life, loss, and fear. She had lost her father young, raised by a mother with migraines. I told her about Detroit days, about Mom's long hours, James's goodbye. She held my hand without words. Some silences speak louder than screams. One rainy day, I kissed her. Right under a flickering streetlight glow, she said, "I'm not ready yet." I said, "I'll wait however long." She looked at me, almost crying. No one's ever said that before. That's how I knew I loved her, because I didn't feel incomplete waiting. We grew slowly, carefully, like flowers, through coffee cups, torn notebooks, long walks. We dreamed in cheap apartments together, drew futures on steamed window panes. After graduation, life rushed in fast. I got a job in Atlanta. She stayed back to care for Mom. We promised to try long distance. Calls turned into texts. Then silence. Love fades when not watered daily. One night she didn't answer at all, and I knew something had changed. 3 weeks later, she called crying. I met someone here. It happened. My throat burned like swallowed fire, but I didn't curse her. She said, "It wasn't about you." I was lonely. "I'm so sorry." I said, "Be with who you choose." Then I hung up, heart tearing open. Days passed in gray silence inside. Work felt like walking underwater forever. Nothing tasted, nothing sparked, everything dulled. Love, when lost, echoes in walls, in coffee mugs, in bed sheets. I'd wake up expecting her there, but find only cold, flat air. One day I deleted her number, but not the memories she gave. They stayed like ink on bone. 2 years later, she emailed suddenly, said, "I made the wrong choice." Her voice was full of regret. Some mistakes wake you too late. I didn't reply, not out of hate, but because some chapters end quietly, and some goodbyes don't need answers. Chapter 3. A Father's Burden. I became a father at 28. Her name is Lily. She's 4 now. But this story starts long before that, when I was still trying to grow up. I met Claire during my 2nd year. She was beautiful in a quiet way. Her laugh filled rooms like sunlight, but she hid scars, like I did. We didn't rush into love. It happened slowly, over time. We shared moments, talks, dreams. Before we knew it, we were in it. I proposed to her under stars, in a park where we first kissed. She said yes, but her eyes were unsure. I didn't see it then, but she was scared. We got married within the year. Our wedding was small, no grand party, just a few friends and family. But it felt perfect for us. Claire and I were happy at first. Then came the pregnancy test result. I remember her crying on the floor. She said she wasn't ready. "I can't do this, Thomas," she whispered. "I'm too young. We're too broke." I didn't have an answer, but I couldn't lose her either. We decided to keep Lily, and everything changed after that. Claire's love became distant, unsure. Her eyes were always somewhere else. As months went by, she pulled away. I worked 2 jobs, barely slept. She stayed home, growing tired and anxious. By the time Lily was born, things were shaky. Claire looked at me with sad eyes. "Do you still love me?" she asked. I nodded, but her gaze was cold. She didn't believe me anymore. We struggled. Claire barely spoke. Lily cried for attention, but Claire withdrew. It felt like we were roommates, not partners. I spent more time at work than at home. One day, I came home late again. Lily was asleep. Claire wasn't. She was packing her things in silence. I stood still, heart pounding in my chest. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't look at me, didn't answer. Finally, she said, "I can't stay here." "I'm lost, Thomas. I need to find myself." I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. She walked out the door without looking back, leaving me alone with Lily's tiny face. My heart was breaking, but my arms were full. Claire came back a few months later. She wanted to see Lily, just visit. I didn't trust her anymore, but I didn't want Lily to lose her mother. We tried to make it work, but the damage was already done. Claire would leave again, then return. But her love wasn't constant. I couldn't understand it. Why couldn't she just love us? Why couldn't she stay? Why was I always the one fighting alone? At night, I would sit by Lily's crib. I'd hold her small hand in mine. I promised her silently, "I'll never leave you." And I meant it with everything I had. I learned to raise Lily by myself. Her first steps, her first words. Everything was me and only me. But I didn't mind. I couldn't. When she turned 3, Claire left again. This time for good. She said she loved Lily but couldn't stay. I didn't know how to tell Lily that. "Where is Mommy?" Lily asked. "Mommy's gone, sweetie," I said softly. "Why?" Lily looked at me, confused. I didn't know how to explain it to her, but I promised myself I would always try to be the dad Lily needed, even if I wasn't enough, even if I didn't have all the answers. I worked harder than ever before. I gave her everything I didn't have, a roof over her head, a loving, safe home filled with warmth. Lily became my world. Every laugh, every tear, every milestone. She taught me how to love again, in ways I never thought were possible. Sometimes when I lay her down at night, I look at her and I see Claire, but I also see myself. I see a father who will never give up. Chapter 4. The Burden of Success. I reached a point where success knocked. It came in the form of a job offer, a corporate position in New York City. The pay was incredible, the future secure. I had worked my whole life for this. Everything seemed perfect on paper. But the closer I got to accepting, the farther away my happiness seemed. I sat with the offer letter in my hands. I could feel the weight of it pressing down. It wasn't about the money. It was about what I'd have to lose. Lily was growing fast. I hadn't seen her take her first step or hear her laugh late at night. I was always either at work or traveling. I thought success would make me whole, but it only made me feel emptier. I didn't want to miss her childhood, but I also didn't want to fail her. "Dad, where are you going?" Lily asked one night. I was packing for a business trip. I stopped, looked at her little face. "I have to work, sweetie." Her eyes filled with confusion. "But why can't you stay with me?" I didn't know how to answer that. How do you explain ambition to a 4-year-old? I kissed her forehead and left. The night felt lonelier with each passing mile. I thought about what Lily had said. "Why can't you stay with me?" I realized, somewhere along the way, I had become a stranger to my own daughter. I had been chasing something that wasn't real, a future that was taking me further from the present. At the office, I started to see the cracks. The people I worked with were bitter. They were fighting for promotions, titles, money, and all I could think about was Lily. One day, I decided to take a break. I called the office and told them I was stepping away. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing. I was simply breathing, existing. I went back home to Lily. We spent the whole day together. We painted, we played, we laughed. I was the dad I had always wanted to be. That night, I made a decision. I didn't need the corporate world to be happy. I needed time with my daughter. I needed a life that wasn't about success, but love. The next day, I told the company I couldn't take the job. They were surprised, but I didn't care. I was finally choosing my own happiness. choosing the present over the future that never satisfied. It wasn't easy. Money was tight. But Lily didn't need fancy things. She needed me. She needed my time. And that's what I gave her. Months passed, and life became slower. Lily and I spent days exploring, learning. I took her to parks, to museums, to cafes. We talked about everything and nothing at all. I may not have a prestigious job. I may not have millions in the bank. But I have something far more valuable: the presence of my daughter in my life. One afternoon, as I watched Lily play, I realized I had everything I ever needed. The weight of success had been a lie. The true success was in these moments, here. I may never be a CEO, but I will always be the best dad. And that's enough for me. Chapter 5. The Road to Redemption. I woke up that morning with a feeling. It wasn't a good feeling. It was a weight, a heaviness I couldn't shake. The past had caught up with me again. It had been months since Claire left. I had moved on, or so I thought. But the memories still haunted me. I couldn't escape them, no matter how hard I tried. Lily was growing, thriving even. But something inside me felt broken. I had given up on my own dreams. I had sacrificed them for Lily. But who was I now, without those dreams? I wasn't just a father. I was also Thomas, the man who had aspirations, the man who had lost his way. One night while Lily slept, I stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. I thought about the man I had been, the man I wanted to be. I decided to reach out to Claire, not for her, but for me. I couldn't keep living in the past. I needed to find closure. I called her one afternoon, unsure. "Claire," I said, my voice shaking. "It's been a while. We need to talk." There was silence on the other end. When we met, it was awkward. The years of distance were evident. But I needed answers. I needed to understand why things had fallen apart. "I don't regret Lily," Claire said softly. "I just couldn't keep up with everything. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I wasn't ready for a life I didn't plan." Her words hit me hard. I had spent years blaming her, hating her. But I realized she was just as lost as I had been. She was searching for something, just like me. "I don't want to fight anymore," I told her. "We don't have to be together, but we both need to be there for Lily." I needed peace, not revenge. We talked for hours that day, about our mistakes, our regrets, but we also talked about forgiveness, not just for each other, but for ourselves. Claire and I weren't going to fix everything, but we could start over. We could try to be better for Lily, and that was enough. As I walked away from that meeting, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. I realized that redemption wasn't about fixing the past. It was about accepting it and moving forward. I returned home to Lily, who was waiting. She ran into my arms, her small hands gripping me tight. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "We're going to be okay, sweetie. We're going to be okay." It wasn't just a promise to her. It was a promise to myself. I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be present. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to walk it. I was ready to forgive, to heal, and to move on. For Lily, for Claire, for me. Chapter 6. The power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It's not about letting go of the past. It's about accepting what has happened and learning to live with it. I never understood forgiveness until now. Growing up, I thought it was for the weak, for people who couldn't handle their pain. But now I see it differently. Lily's laughter filled the house that morning. She had become my reason to keep going, but the shadows of my past still lingered. There were days when I felt overwhelmed. Claire had forgiven me, and I had forgiven her. But I had yet to forgive myself. The guilt of what I had done, the mistakes I made, they haunted me. One evening, I sat by the window. Lily was playing outside with her friends. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. I thought about the years of pain, the bitterness, the resentment. I had carried them all with me, and now I realized they had only held me back. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending things were okay. It was about freeing yourself from the burden, freeing yourself to move forward, to heal. I thought about the years I had wasted in anger, in regret, but I couldn't change the past. What mattered was the future, and I could shape that. I picked up the phone and called my mother. "Mom," I said, "I need to talk to you." There was a long silence on the other end, and then she spoke, her voice gentle. "I've been waiting for this day," she said softly. I hadn't realized how much I needed her. For years, I had blamed her too. Blamed her for not being there when I needed her. We talked for hours about everything, about the years I spent angry and hurt, but we also talked about forgiveness, about how we could both heal together. When I hung up, I felt lighter. I had finally forgiven my mother. I had forgiven myself, and I could feel the weight lifting off my chest. The next morning, I sat down with Lily. She asked me what was wrong. I smiled at her and said, "Nothing, sweetie. Everything's going to be all right." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I truly believed it. I wasn't perfect, and I never would be. But I was doing the best I could. Lily wrapped her little arms around me, and in that moment, I knew I had everything I needed. The power of forgiveness had freed me. It had given me a second chance. I wasn't defined by my mistakes. I wasn't defined by my past. I was defined by the love I gave, by the love I had for Lily. And that was enough. Chapter 7. The Journey Within. Sometimes, the most difficult journey we take is the one inside ourselves. We spend so much time running from our past, from our pain, that we forget to face it. We forget to heal the wounds within us. Lily had been my strength, my anchor. But deep down, I knew I still had work to do. I had to learn to forgive myself completely. I had to understand who I was without my mistakes. One quiet morning, I took a walk. It wasn't a long walk, just around the block. But it was the first time in a while that I was truly alone with my thoughts. The air was crisp, the sky clear. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. But something inside me was shifting. A small, quiet voice told me it was time. Time to look inward. Time to face the pain. For so long, I had avoided it, ignored it. I had pushed it down, buried it deep. But now, it was rising to the surface. I sat on a park bench, taking a deep breath. I closed my eyes and let the silence fill me. No distractions, no worries, just me. It felt strange at first, but in that silence I began to hear the truth. The truth was that I had been afraid of facing my mistakes, afraid of facing the man I had become. But what I realized was this: I wasn't broken. I had made mistakes, yes, but those mistakes didn't define me. They were just moments in time, moments that had shaped me, but didn't control me. The journey within wasn't about changing who I was. It was about understanding myself, accepting myself. It was about finding peace with my past and using it as a tool to build a better future. That afternoon, I returned home to Lily. She was sitting on the couch reading a book. When she looked up, her eyes sparkled. She had that same innocence, that same joy. I sat beside her, and for a moment, we didn't speak. But we didn't need to. She knew something had changed in me, and I knew something had changed in her. The journey within was not easy. It took time, it took patience, but I was willing to take it. For me, for Lily, for our future. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I was learning to trust the process. I was learning to trust myself. That night, as Lily fell asleep, I whispered a promise to her. I will always be here, sweetheart. And together, we'll face whatever comes next. And for the first time in years, I believed it with all my heart. The journey within was just beginning, but it was a journey worth taking. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. A new chapter in life doesn't start with a grand gesture. It starts with small, everyday decisions. It's the choice to rise every morning and try, even when you're not sure what you're doing. The days that followed were full of small steps. It wasn't an easy path, but I was learning. Lily's laughter filled the house more than ever, and with it came a sense of hope. I started to rebuild, not just my relationship with Lily, but my relationship with myself. I took small risks, trusting that I could handle them. There were days when I doubted myself, but I kept moving forward. It wasn't about perfection. It never was. It was about progress, however small. I began attending therapy again. It wasn't something I was proud of at first, but slowly I started to open up, to let go of the shame I had carried for so long. Lily was doing better too. She was learning about forgiveness and love, and she was growing into a thoughtful, strong girl. I was proud of her every single day. One afternoon, while we were at the park, I saw a family having a picnic nearby. The father was laughing with his children, and the mother was making them sandwiches. For a moment, I felt a pang of longing. I wanted that, a family, whole and happy. But then I remembered, my family was already whole, in its own way. We didn't have to be perfect. We didn't need anyone else to complete us. We had each other, and that was enough. We had love. We had strength. It wasn't long before I started dating again. I met someone who shared similar values, someone who understood the importance of healing, but more than that, she respected my journey. I took things slow, learning to trust again. I wasn't in a rush. I wanted to build a relationship from a place of strength, not desperation or fear. Lily met her, and they got along well. It wasn't love at first sight, but it was respect, and that was enough for me. I had learned not to rush things, not to force them. As the weeks passed, I felt a shift in me. I was no longer the man who had lost his way. I was becoming the man I had always wanted to be. The man I had always been deep down. One evening, while watching a sunset with Lily, I realized something important. I had made it through the hardest part of my life. I had faced my demons, forgiven myself, and emerged stronger. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing for sure. I was ready for whatever came next. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. I had learned to forgive, to heal, and to love. And now, it was time to look forward, not backward. Lily looked up at me with her bright eyes. "I'm glad we're okay now, Daddy," she said, smiling. I kissed her forehead and said, "Me too, sweetie. We've come a long way, and we're just getting started." We weren't perfect, and we didn't need to be. We had each other, and that was everything. We were ready for the future, ready for a new beginning. And with that, we walked forward together, hand in hand. Chapter 9. The next chapter. I never imagined life could be so full of surprises. Just when I thought I had it all figured out, the universe threw another curveball my way. But this time, I was ready for it. Life was never going to be perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. What mattered was how we handled the imperfections, how we grew stronger because of them. Lily and I had made it through the darkest times. Now, we were embracing the light. The future wasn't certain, but it was ours. And that was more than enough. We took each day as it came, focusing on the love we shared, the lessons we had learned. We didn't know where the road would take us, but we knew we'd walk it together. The next chapter was ours to write, and we were ready for whatever came next. Chapter 10. Moving forward. It had been months since everything had changed. Lily and I had faced so many challenges, but now we were in a better place. The past still lingered in my thoughts, but I wasn't letting it control me anymore. Life wasn't perfect. There were still days of uncertainty, but I had learned that those days didn't define me. What defined me was how I responded to them. Lily had grown even more independent. She was doing better at school, and her laughter filled our home every day. I knew that, despite everything, we had built something strong together. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, looking through old pictures. I saw a picture of me from my youth, a time when I was lost, unsure of who I was. It was hard to believe that man was me, the man who made mistakes, the man who hurt others, including himself. But he was still me. He was part of my story. I took a deep breath. It felt good to finally accept that, to accept all parts of myself, the good and the bad. That was the key to healing. And as I looked at the picture of my younger self, I whispered softly, "I forgive you." It was the first time I had said it out loud, and it felt like a weight was lifted from my chest. Lily came into the room, noticing the picture in my hand. "Who's that, Dad?" she asked curiously. I smiled, looking at her with affection. "That's me," I said softly. "That's the old me, the one who's still learning." She smiled and hugged me. "I think you're a great dad," she said. And in that moment, I knew I was. I wasn't perfect, but I was doing my best. Chapter 11. A Full Circle. As the seasons passed, life began to feel less like a struggle. It wasn't that everything was perfect, far from it, but I had learned to be content with the progress. I had learned that sometimes the journey mattered more than the destination. Lily and I took small trips together, to the beach, to the mountains, and even just to the park. Every new experience felt like another step forward, another piece of healing added to the puzzle. One day we went to the beach to watch the sunset. Lily had brought her favorite book, and I was content just sitting next to her, watching the waves. It wasn't about doing anything extraordinary. It was about sharing the moment together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that this was all I needed. This moment, this peace, this love. It was everything. Lily put her book down and looked at me. "You know, I think you're right," she said, smiling. "Life is good now." And I realized she was right. Life was good, not because it was perfect, but because we had learned to live it with love. We had learned to appreciate the little things. We had come full circle. The man I was not the man I had been. I was someone stronger now, someone who had learned to heal. Chapter 12. The Future. The future was uncertain, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could face anything. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't broken. I had learned to love, to forgive, and to heal. Lily and I had come so far together. We had been through so much, but we had come out the other side stronger, and now we were ready for whatever came next. I didn't know what the future would hold. Maybe there would be more challenges, more lessons to learn, more pain to overcome. But I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't face it alone. The future was ours to build, and I was ready to face it with an open heart. Final thoughts. As the story draws to a close, I realize something important. The journey of healing and growth doesn't have a perfect ending. There is no final destination. Instead, life is a continuous process of growth, of learning to love ourselves and to find peace with who we are. It's about taking each day as it comes and making the most of it. In the end, I learned that the greatest gift we can give ourselves is forgiveness. Forgiveness for the past, for our mistakes, and for others. It's what sets us free. It's what allows us to move forward. And with that, I can say that this story is just one chapter in a much larger journey. The future is still unwritten, but I know one thing. I will face it with hope, with love, and with strength.